Right, thanks a lot. Right, welcome everybody to this afternoon's Woollen planning. You might well have noticed I'm not going low. I'm standing in for her today. She's at a good friend of hers funeral, I believe. Appointment to chair. Andrea sorted that out this morning on bus. So we'll go to item 2, membership of the committee. I believe we've got 2 substitutes today.
I have
Councillor Fair.
noticed, you want Councillor Lowe, by the way.
Are you?
I haven't noticed. I'm substituting for Councillor Jackie.
Yeah, I'll just be in my father's later on.
Right. Everybody else has
Apologies.
2 apologies. Right. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Are we okay passing those as a true record? Yep. Item 4, declarations of interest in lobbying. I'll start with Councillor Dad.
Item 8, application 20219216. It's in my wall. It's in that I've been lobbied by the applicant. No.
Councillor Danmar. Councillor Sokol. Councillor Firth. Councillor Gregg. Councillor Sheard. Councillor Stephen.
Yes, lobbied on agenda item 11, no action taken.
Councillor Lukic.
Nothing from me, Chair.
Councillor Bennett.
None, Chair.
Councillor Lawson.
Number 1 Pen Drive, Chair. I had some dealings with this and when last time it came up, so I'm putting this in as a belt and braces, if you like, but there has been chatter locally, so I'm putting that down. Thank you, Chair.
And it's none from me. Item 5, admissions public. We're on YouTube and goodness knows what else. So what's your behaviour? No shouting, bawling and swearing, etc. Item 6, deputations and petitions.
None, Chair.
No. Any public questions? Right, we took part in site visits at High Street, Thorny Ledge, Wilson Avenue, Mayfield, Northstead, Ravensthorpe. Next, item 11, planning applications herself. And the first one is page 15, it's High Street, Thorny Ledge, and it's Olivia.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm Olivia Roberts, the case officer for the application. The application is for the erection of 1 detached dwelling on land adjacent to 125 High Street. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Masood Ahmed. The reasons for the request are set out within the committee report. 5 representations have been received to the application, 3 in support of the proposal and 2 against. The site comprises an area of overgrown redundant land which is located to the head of the residential cul-de-sac, as can be seen on the aerial image. High Street is characterised by detached properties which vary in terms of their design and appearance, however are located within substantial plots, notably with extensive gardens to the rear elevations. Land levels fall to the rear of the site, where the properties on Daleside are located at a significantly lower land level. Engineering operations have been carried out to provide levelled amenity space for 46 and 48 Daleside, which are located within close proximity of the shared boundary and can be seen here on the image. The site is roughly rectangular in nature and its size is significantly smaller than the plots of the surrounding residential properties on High Street. It's considered that the constrained nature of the site and its proposed layout would be out of keeping with the character of the surrounding area. There have been 3 refusals for a dwelling on the site, and the most recent 2 applications in 2010 and 2015 have been dismissed at appeal on the basis that the introduction of a dwelling to the site, given its limited depth, would be out of keeping with the character and appearance of the surrounding area. The appeal decisions are a material consideration, and officers do not consider there to have been any changes in circumstances which would alter this stance. It is considered that sufficient parking would be provided for the dwelling, and no concerns have been raised regarding the access or in terms of highway safety. The properties along High Street vary in terms of their design, and the dwelling would be of a similar style to that at 125 High Street. As such, the design of the dwelling itself is considered acceptable from a visual amenity perspective, and those are the proposed floor plans. The dwelling will be located to the north of the properties on Daleside, and the impact on the properties themselves by way of overbearing and overshadowing is considered to be acceptable on balance. However, due to the elevated position of the dwelling in relation to the neighbouring properties and the subsequent need for retaining structures and screening, it's considered that the proposal would result in a detrimental overbearing impact to the amenity space of the properties, which is located close to that shared boundary. A study window is also proposed at first floor level to the rear of the dwelling, which would be considered a habitable room. Due to the land level differences, it is considered that the opening would not allow for harmful overlooking into the rear of the properties, but it would allow for overlooking of their amenity space. Officers consider the principle of development to be unacceptable and deem that the associated boundary treatment and retaining structures would result in an overbearing impact to the rear amenity space of the properties on Daleside. The rear habitable opening would also allow for harmful overlooking of this amenity space to a level that would be detrimental to the amenity of the occupiers. The application is therefore recommended for a refusal, and the reasons are set out in full in the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Right, we've got two speakers on this item. We've got Ryan Russell and Simon Russell. Are you bothered which way around you go? Or right, we'll take it as printed. Ryan Russell. You have 3 minutes starting from now. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak on this application. My name is Mr. Simon Russell, and I'm the father of the applicant, my son, who's simply wanting to provide a home for his family. I've been an architect for 42 years now, retired, and felt that, obviously I needed to come in and help my son. When we were first introduced to this site, we was actually introduced to it through my father, who's a really good friend of Mr. Jonathan Greening, the owner, who unfortunately is 92 and blind, and his son had a stroke. So he's obviously seen the opportunity for my son wanting a home and said, were we interested? When we went down High Street the first time, I must admit, when we looked at it, we thought, what a beautiful plot, beautiful views, a big plot, and lo and behold, we couldn't believe it, Binthornell, it's flat and level with the road. On the end of adopted cul-de-sac, gas, water, electric and drainage, all there, even a drop curb ready to go straight in. So we were quite kind of adventurous, thinking, we can really make a nice design of this. And then we looked, unfortunately, at the past, and we thought, yeah, it's at 2 failed appeals. However, looking at the details of those appeals, we felt that Mr. Greening had kind of not been given the best advice. And we do agree with those appeal decisions in a sense that the first one was a full 2-storey building, which quite clearly looked over into the 2 houses below it in Daleside. However, the appeal officer and planning said that the plot was small. The plot is not small. It's 32 metres by 16. And I can tell you as an architect, an average size plot for a 5-bed detached is 12 metres by 26 metres. All plots have to be taken in their own merit, and not all are the same, and I'm sure you agree with that. The second application, it was as though the architect had taken this on board, and rather stupidly, we feel, to prove a point, he's put a rather small bungalow right in the very far corner, only 1.5 meters away from the boundary, from the back boundary and the side boundary, with a 26-metre footpath leading down to it from the road. However, appeal officers noted on that there was no overlooking issues. Can I finish? No. Right, so we feel the plot's big enough, more than big enough. Thank you very much. Sorry, I was nervous.
Next speaker is Simon.
Ryan.
Ryan, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak on this application. My name is Ryan Russell and I am the applicant. This is an application for my proposed family home, so I am very much emotionally invested in this application. We have not approached this site blind, and we are aware of the history of refusals and appeals being dismissed, but those schemes were poor and the refusals were the right decisions. My father is an architect who has submitted many planning applications and developed many sites in Kirklees. Given this, we engaged in a pre-application inquiry where the planning officer dealing with it emailed to confirm support in principle for our proposal, but needed it signing off by their line manager. The line manager unfortunately took a contrary view and cited the 2 previous refusals as to why development here was unacceptable. The 2 previous refusals for dwellings that were dismissed on appeal were both poor schemes in terms of scale and impact on neighbouring living conditions that were rightly rejected. We have carefully reviewed these decisions and submitted an application that overcomes the previous planning concerns. Whilst every planning application should be considered on its own planning merits and the planning history is a material consideration, we consider that officers seem to be giving undue weight to the planning history and ignoring the merits of this application. The plot is more than capable of accommodating a bungalow. It is a larger plot size than a number of nearby new developments given permission by the council, the most recent development being 400 square metres to this one, which is 530. This is acknowledged in the officer report before you at point 10.17 that states, and I quote, "In summary, when considered in isolation, the scale of the dwelling is considered satisfactory for one detached dwelling with the provision of off-street parking and a modest area of amenity space. The scale and design of the bungalow would not result in unacceptable overlooking of neighbouring properties, and appropriate conditions could be included to deal with boundary treatment and obscure glazing of any windows where overlooking is perceived. This is effectively the last plot on High Street where it would not conflict with the varied character of the rest of the properties, being very much at the end of the road. It is a relatively level site with the majority in the surrounding area having steep, unsuitable gardens for families with young children like myself. An appropriate design development would be a productive use of site rather than leaving it as an area that could invite antisocial behaviour. I believe officers have not taken the positive planning matters into account and that members are best placed to judge it on its own planning merits with an open mind. I respectfully request that you consider the proposal acceptable and agree that it would not cause the harm suggested. Thank you for your time.
It's over to you. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a question before anything else? The retaining structure that's required for this, is any part of that outside the red line?
Sorry, can you just clarify what you're asking, just so I'm clear?
Well, I'm assuming that given where the house is located, that is right on the edge of the property, that some engineering work might be required in order to make sure that its position on the hillside is stable. I'm And I just wonder whether all that can be accommodated within the red line of this planning application, or whether any of it sort of extends into the grounds of the houses below.
Well, all development would be within the red line of the planning application if it's been submitted. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, can you ask the officer? Yeah, I know this application have been refused twice and been refused by the appeal. Do you think there is significant difference between this new application and the last 2 or 3 applications being refused?
Chair. Yeah. Thank you. So in terms of the difference, obviously it's noted by the applicant that, you know, there was a 2-storey and that the bungalow previously. So it's the scale that has changed. However, the principle hasn't changed, and the issues that are in terms of overlooking haven't been addressed. So yes, the scale has been amended from the previous refusal. However, it's the principle that really is the main sticking point on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see there here. I mean, this plot is right as is stated by, I haven't been on the site visit, sorry, I could not make it today, but looking into the paper, you know, this plot is right at the end of the adopted road, yeah, Cul-De-Sac. And the representation, we got 5 are actually balanced. Some of them, there is a big improvement of the plot, and some they haven't got much to say on them. And I don't know, Chair, I think I'm in balance. So I see how the members go for that. Thank you.
Councillor Deb.
Through you, Chair, I've just got a question really for officers, because I'm really confused, because on one of the points, well, point 1 of the recommendation for refusal, it stated that the proposed plot is small and constrained in size when compared to other plots within the vicinity. I'm not an architect, but from what the applicants have said, it's quite a large plot compared to what other plot sizes are for other dwellings that are approved within the area. So can we have some clarity around why we think it's small and constrained, please? Thank you.
You, Chair, thank you. I think the point that was raised by the applicant was that in the context of any application site that comes forward, as sort of and maybe a national standard is what was being referred to. However, when looking at the scale and size of a plot, you look in the vicinity and you look at the street scene, and it is considered by officers that in the context of the wider street scene, to develop this site with the size of the property that's on the site wouldn't be acceptable in the context of the wider street scene.
Councillor Woolkich.
Thank you, Chair. It's a really finely balanced one, I think, this one. My main question is about the neighbouring property on High Street, recently built, number 125, looks to me quite similar in terms of plot size, scale and relationship to the properties to the rear and sort of distance to the shared boundary. That property at 125 was an approved development by, I think, by the council, I believe. So I was wondering how officers view this plot differently to recommend refusal when compared with number 125.
Through your Chair, thank you. So in terms of looking at the context, 125, you could say if you feel that is comparable. However, officers consider that in the wider street scene, which is what you're looking at here when you're assessing a planning application, is in the norm, what is the general character of the area. And it was considered by officers that it wasn't an acceptable size of dwelling and size of site to accept a dwelling on this site.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question related to the rear of the proposed property. In terms of the previous applications, were there any with regards to the approved previous application of a bungalow, did that go right up to the curtilage of the plot, like the existing property does? Appreciate you might not be able to lay your hands on that information immediately.
No, it's just that there's been no approval for a dwelling on the site.
I'm very sorry.
No,
I
that's
thought
fine.
there was a bungalow that had been approved previously.
No.
Okay, apologies for that. Can I just obviously pick up on something that Councillor Lukic has said with regards to the property that number 125? It does appear on the face of it to be very similar to obviously the applicant's proposals. With that in mind, am I correct in believing that the reasons for recommending refusal are due to the fact that there is no rear passageway and that the proposed applicant's property will be of a much greater overbearing nature than the existing 125 plot? Because if there could be clarity on that, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Your chair, thank you. So just to clarify, there's 3 reasons for refusal. So the first is to do with the size of the plot and the constrained nature. The second is to do with the elevated position in relation to the neighbouring properties on Dale side. And the third reason is to do with the elevated position in terms of the study window on the overlooking. So in terms of the properties at 125 that you've made reference to, there is a separation distance of 26 metres between that and the neighbouring site, whereas for the property, it's right to the rear and on the application site. So yes, there is a different relationship between 125 and the properties on Dale side than there is with this site, this application that's currently in front of members.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we've gone around the table with a variety of for reasons, but I've looked at that, and while I listened to the applicant quoting 217, yes, and I looked at 218, and that contradicts completely what that says about the principles. So therefore, to move things on, I move officer recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, application is finely balanced. I hear what's said about number 125. There is a gradient difference. The land does fall away between the applicant's plot and 125. So again, what we find that there's this whole principle of the application on its merits, and this particular application, I think, is still for perhaps just number 2 by itself. Reason number 2 by itself is still overbearing to the houses below at number 48 and 46. It's not a true bungalow. If it had been, that might be slightly different, but it's not. We've got what we've got in front of us. So I would second Councillor Firth's proposal and that we accept officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was beginning to change my mind, I have to say, but I think I'm now going to change it back again. It does seem to me that one of the problems with this proposed dwelling is that it is almost impossible to screen it because of the height difference between this proposed house and the one on well, there's 2 of them on Dale side below. You couldn't within the site find any way of mitigating the overlooking problem, which clearly is a problem. I mean, I do wonder whether if the house was turned round through 90 degrees, whether there were no habitable room windows on ironically on the side which would give you the best view, then it might be a bit different. But then that would be kind of defeating the object of putting a house in that location, you can't use the view because you're overlooking somebody below it. I wouldn't mind a bungalow in a sense, because I think that given the range of properties that are on the side of this hill, you probably could accommodate it. But given what we've got here, I think I support the officer's recommendation because it's despite the intentions of the applicant, which they've gone to quite a bit of trouble to try and utilise this plot. In the end, I don't think a solution, an acceptable solution, has been found.
Sandro, any more? Councillor Dad?
Through you, Chair. Thank you. I'm going to move to defer it to see if officers and the applicant can actually work together on something that a dwelling that would work in that area. It's in my ward. I've been on a couple of site visits now, and it'd be a real shame if that was just left as it is, because it's already attracting fly tipping, which we're having to deal with on a regular basis, and antisocial behaviour. You've got a young family here that potentially want to develop that site. I'm going to move to defer on those reasons to see if there is something that you could potentially work on with the applicant. I don't know if anyone's going to second that, but that's my position.
Yeah, I would like to second Councillor Dad on that. Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Just to for the point one reason refusal of the principal and the consistent approach that we've had, and I note your point, Councillor Pinnock, about turning it round, etc. But by turning round, you're sort of creating further issues in terms of building line, etc. It's just to be careful in terms of deferring, as we've been consistent with advice going forward in terms of developing the site and pre-apps and applications that we've had on the site.
Going to say the first to be completed, moved and seconded was the one for officer's recommendation. So that is what we're going to vote on. See where we go from there. So we will go to a vote.
Okay, so
names out, Andrea.
Yeah, so the vote is on refusal. Councillor Dad.
Against.
Councillor Anwar. Councillor Sokol.
Against.
Councillor Firth.
For.
Councillor Gregg.
For.
Councillor Sheard.
Against.
Councillor Stephen. Against. Councillor Lukic.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
6, 5. So it's refused.
Right. Next item, page 33. This is 24 Wilson Avenue, Mayfield. Alenia.
So thank you, Chair. Everybody ready? Okay, perfect. So my name's Alenia Jackson and I'm the case officer for this application. So this is an application for a single-storey garden room to create an annex in the rear garden of 24 Wilson Avenue. So the images displayed on the screen demonstrate the application site. So as I said, the application is for a single-storey garden room. The application site is a mid-terrace dwelling, which currently benefits from its own driveway and a private rear garden. The area is residential in nature, with the majority of properties being of similar scale and design. As you can see to the rear, there's a bit of variation onto Wilson Road. The proposed outbuilding would be situated in this location here. if you can see on the screen, which is the rear garden of number 24 and would be situated approximately 16 metres north of the conservatory belonging to 24 Wilson Avenue. There is a slight change in ground levels between Wilson Road and Wilson Avenue, which goes towards the south. The images on screen depict the current site layout. And then the proposal would be asymmetric in shape, which would follow the constraints of the site. It would be 7 metres along the rear elevation with a depth of 5.3 metres along the western elevation and 3.3 metres along the eastern elevation. Officer recommendation is to approve the application.
We've got one speaker, and that's James Hallis, who's the neighbour. You've got 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you all. As I say, my name's James Hallis. My father's a resident at number 5 Wilson Avenue, Wilson Road. I'd just like to say I've read the report. I would like to raise a few points from the report if I can. I'd like to start with point 10.8. 5 Wilson Road represents the start of the building line for Wilson Road. It says here that the property doesn't infringe in a significant way, but it does come in front of my father's property at 5 Wilson Road. I think the main point, though, if I can go to point 10.13, it says 5 lines down, to be situated southeast of 5 Wilson Road. The property will not reside within a 45-degree vertical visibility splay of any habitable room at number 5 and be set lower due to the topography of the site. This is absolutely within a few degrees of my father's front bedroom window. I understand that the ground will be lowered down, but that introduces a new risk for us, as people have seen today, about the retaining wall. I understand a retaining wall isn't necessarily what you're discussing here today. I do get that, but the point for us is, if it goes through here, we may not have another chance to stop this. This retaining wall, whether it's built or whether it isn't built, but the digging out of the banking represents a risk to our property. Not only does it represent a risk to our property, but it creates an issue that can only be seen and maintained from our property. Our main concern is that if this ground is dug out to countersink this 3-metre tall property, as is described here, that then leaves an issue where that can only be seen, worked on and maintained from our property. This dwelling might stand for 50 years. That banking behind this property then becomes our maintenance issue, because it simply cannot practically be maintained or looked after any other way. Well, I've only got a few seconds left. We're on board. We understand the environmental issues. We understand the housing crisis. We understand that this may create another dwelling somewhere in Kirklees by someone moving here, but we would ask that you offer us a level of protection from basically, damage to our land and, in all honesty, a dwelling in front of my father's bedroom window. Thank you.
Members, it's over to you.
I would like officer to respond to that, whether it's necessary to dig so far down, 6 foot, whatever, and is a retaining wall a condition?
Thank you, through you, Chair. In terms of engineering and building work, it's not a planning matter. That's a matter for building warrant. However, in terms of building down, as I say, these matters would be covered by the building standards regulations and not planning. But what I can say is that the built form of the development will be set off from that retaining wall. And yes, some as you saw today with the levels, that there will be some engineering works. However, it's not a material planning consideration that can be taken into account in any decision making.
Will the, can I ask, will the owners of the proposed new building be able to get to the rear of the proposed building without gaining access from, depending on access from number 5?
Sorry, through you, Chair. Do you mean as in will the applicant be able to build it without having to go into the neighbour's property? Yeah, there's a set off from that rear boundary from the red line on the plans for 50 centimetre gap, but there is a gap between. And as I say, it would be covered by other areas of legislation in terms of that engineering works, in terms of that set off. Is that okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. It was interesting to look at the site because there's sort of irregularly shaped plots and things, and I appreciate the representations we've just heard. I do think they mainly concern things that aren't material planning considerations, as officers have said to us as well. So in terms of the planning considerations, I think this should be approved. So I'm going to move the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Second Councillor Lukic's proposal. As I understand it, this is here because this is an officer, and this would have had a fairly standard response and would have been approved as a matter of course. It is only here because it is because an officer. There's nothing in here that we should be particularly alarmed about, notwithstanding the neighbours' concerns. We understand those, but we all have also had outlined from officers the other parts of legislation that do cover those to the service protection. So yes, I second that.
Next, the vote is to delegate to officers to approve. Councillor Dodd?
For.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Firth?
For.
Councillor Gregg?
For.
Councillor Sheard?
For.
Councillor Stephen?
For.
Councillor Lukic?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
And Councillor Hall?
For.
Okay, that's carried. Thanks.
Next, page 41. Just to recap, this is at 48 Northstead, Ravenstow. It's Jenny.
Sorry. With regard, I don't know how much of that you did here. The front extension's fine. The concerns are the side and the rear extension, particularly the rear corner, because number 46 sits so much closer to the road. So the rear extension going up to the boundary and 3 metres beyond the rear will have an overbearing and oppressive impact. It's appreciated that the neighbour does have a planning approval for their own extensions, which is still live. They just haven't, started it yet. And theirs is for a 2-storey side and a 2-storey rear extension, as shown on the screen. But because of the relationship, even if they extend, we're still very concerned about the overbearing and oppressive impact. As such, officers have recommended the application for refusal for the reasons outlined in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
There are no speakers, so members, it's over to you. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, can I just get this straight? So both 48 and 46 have got applications to have side extension. Is that?
Through you, Chair. Yes.
So in effect, if they were both implemented, then you would have them sort of right close together like that, or something like that. Anyway, but with a few centimetres in between them, or perhaps. Well, therein lies a problem. It seems to me that if you're going to have a building that is still separated from the one next to it, and then you need to be out. It needs the separation needs to be wide enough for a person of normal width to get through it. No, I'm sorry. I was just looking sort of. I wasn't picking on you, Councillor Firth. So the question, I suppose, is, do we mind if the two buildings join onto each other? And I think the answer to that is probably yes, which I think is what colours the officer's recommendation, I suspect. I agree that the front extension is probably okay, but a full height extension to the rest of the building is not on. Now, this is interesting because since they have both put in applications, would one of them be allowed if we refuse the other one? I that's an open question. I'm not trying to answer that, but I'd be interested in what officers think about that.
Through you, Chair. The application for number 46 has been approved, and it was approved in 2019, so that does have consent now. That was obviously done before the house building house extension SPDs. I will just point out, we'd have kind of gone with the side extension if they'd been prepared to kind of negotiate that rear corner to reduce the impact, because of the way the properties sit, with one quite a bit in front of the other, and there's around about at least a 30 centimetre, maybe even 50 centimetre gap between the two extensions, so there's a clear physical separation.
Yeah, just to point out to the members of the panel, both 46 and 48, they are brothers. So I've done several site visits as well, and they're not concerned about putting in objections for each other or anything like that, but they are willing to come to some sort of arrangement where both plannings can go ahead.
We've got a bit of a problem here. One's been approved already, so am I right to say that theirs is up to the boundary already, the existing plan? We're messing about with this. It's either straight refusal, or we can actually go back with planning to the applicant and discuss what's just been mentioned, and then resubmit. So I move deferral for this.
Yeah, I would like to second
place.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, Chair, could I ask the officers in relation to, let's, for example, say this goes to a deferral and the situation is that they modify the back end of the property. I appreciate what Councillor Pinnock has said about the length between the space between the buildings. What is the official concern, if any, with regards to the space between those buildings if the backs of the property were modified to an acceptable standard? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So just to clarify that the reason for refusal is to do with the side and rear extension cumulatively, and that mass and bulk onto the neighbouring property. In terms of the previous refusal, it was refused on several grounds. However, we've reassessed evidence in front of us, which is the neighbouring property having the approval, and also recent appeal decisions that we've had in terms of what we call a collective building group, in terms of what's in the vicinity. So that area, in terms of the side extension, has been rescinded from this application, shall we say. So I think, members, just to be clear, that the reason for refusal on this one is to do with the side and rear and the cumulative impact in terms of overbearing mass. It's not to do with that, the single extension and the rear, if that makes it at all clear in terms of what amendments could be brought forward to make this accepted, to address that reason for refusal is what we'd be looking for.
Thank you, Chair. From what I've heard, officers have already tried to negotiate the size of the extensions, and modifications to that wasn't forthcoming. So in terms of deferral for that sort of reason, I don't see what that would achieve personally. There might be other reasons to defer though. The way I look very carefully sort of when we were doing our site visit, you know, what other extensions were nearby, also, you know, already constructed or approved. This one did seem significantly larger and overbearing than anything else that had been put in. And I think we have to consider the impact on potential future occupiers of the neighbouring dwelling as well, whoever might be there at the moment. So I think it does strike me that the officers recommended refusal and the reasons for that do seem appropriate to me. So I'm going to move the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. So I understand that there's already a mover and a seconder for deferral. To negotiate further, I agree with Councillor Lukic that those negotiations seem to have happened and been semi-fruitful. I doubt, or I certainly suspect, that any further negotiation might not be as fruitful. So I do wonder what we hope to benefit from deferral. I think there is enough for we have in front of us a fully fledged application, and I think that's kind of the best we're going to get. So I would certainly support a recommendation for officers. Sorry, the approval of officers' recommendation. Councillor Lukic is right, quite right. The decisions that we're making today are not just about the relationships between the two houses now. They are about the relationship between the two houses for the future and for the future inhabitants. And I think on that reason, I'd be supporting refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I just want to support Councillor Firth on the deferral of it.
Can I come back, Chair? As the officer has mentioned, the SPDs have changed quite recently because I'm getting, you through the planning services, I'm getting outraged applicants, outraged architects saying that this plan would have been approved last year, and now everything's changed, and particularly on the gaps between houses. So I think there's an opportunity here to discuss with the applicant and the architect, say this is possible, and if you're not acceptable, it will be refused. Simple as that. You know,
Kirsty, yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, the SPD was 2019, and sorry, it's 2021. Sorry, but in terms of the gaps and the terracing effect, as you'll be aware, it's all as an individual basis, and it's with previous appeals, etc. And that's where we've got to with this application. Just wanted to clarify that. Sorry.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Firth. I think if there is some goodwill from the applicants in taking on board what the committee has said with regards to the space between the buildings, behind the rear of the building, and the fact that Councillor Lukic has alluded to, although they may be related and happy with the arrangements themselves, future generations, we have to give consideration to that, and that has to be acknowledged. And I would be minded to give some good faith here and vote for a deferral, but based on the fact that I'd be very disappointed if it came back and there weren't sufficient recommendations for approval or some considerable changes to the planning application, because it isn't satisfactory for me at the moment with the distance between the buildings. Thank you.
Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Just for my own peace of mind before we go to a vote, do the officers think that they have very clearly said that if we amended that corner, if you amended the plans and changed the corner, we would be happy with it? And was that then absolutely vetoed by the applicant strongly? Because like Councillor Gregg just said, I don't want to defer this for it to come back and it not have been kind of resolved. I don't want to do it if it is going to be fruitless. But do we think that we've already had a strong discussion about that corner that has been rejected fully, wholeheartedly by the applicant already?
Through you, Chair, we have had discussions with the applicant's agent, and we did tell them that if they took certain actions, which was to take the rear corner off, slightly tweak the rear extension design, we would look to support the scheme, and they declined to do that. The next thing we knew, we had a committee request.
Right, well, it does sound as though what you're asking for, you're not going to get. The applicants have already made their mind up. But I'm not the committee. It's up to you. So first on the table was deferment, which was moved by Councillor Firth and seconded by Councillor Anwar. So we'll go to a vote.
Being given that officers did approach an offer that would be acceptable if they remove the corner.
Yeah.
So that's withdrawn.
So that's Milan.
If Councillor Parsi withdraws this one, I'm happy to move deferral. If the application come back, if it not change anything on there, we will be refusing this application.
We're going to end up in the same place as what we're in now. Anyway. Right, well, moved by Councillor Sokol, seconded by Councillor Anwar. So,
You seconded it.
yeah.
Yeah, I would like to second Councillor Moan's motion. Also to that, Don, I think the applicants should get one more chance to rectify this application and be brought back. And
depends on what decision we do now.
Yeah.
But if it does come back, that decision will be final when it does, or if it comes back. Right, we'll go to a. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. There's just some concern about the order that we do the votes now, because Councillor Firth withdrew the motion to defer, which left then my motion for the refusal, which was seconded by Councillor Lawson.
He didn't say.
He didn't say it during his speech.
Otherwise,
Okay.
it would have been your vote. Yeah.
Disregard, Chair. Thank you.
Nice try. Andrea.
Okay, so the deferral vote then first. Councillor Judd? 4. Councillor Anwar?
4.
Councillor Sokol?
4.
Councillor Firth?
Abstain.
Councillor Gregg?
4.
For deferral. Councillor Sheard?
Against.
Councillor Stephen,
Against.
Councillor Lukic,
Against.
Councillor Pinnock,
Against.
Councillor Lawson,
Against.
Councillor Hall.
Against.
Right, so that falls. So we have a refusal that's been moved. And it's now seconded. So we'll take the refusal vote. Councillor Dadd?
Against.
Councillor Amwar?
Against.
Councillor Sokol?
Against.
Councillor Firth?
Abstain.
Councillor Gregg?
Against.
Councillor Sheard?
For.
Councillor Stephen?
For.
Councillor Lukic?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
Okay, so that is refused.
Right, welcome back. I just want to say, when we start an item from now on, if you're not in the room when the application starts, you will not get a vote. It's that simple, because I've had enough of this. Right, page 51, number 1 pen drive item.
Point of order, please, Chair. On the previous item, Councillor Anwar said he'd discussed the application with the applicant and the neighbour. At the start of the meeting, he didn't declare that he'd been lobbied on that application.
Just to clarify Councillor Lukic's question, they approached me before I was an elected member. So they approached me in mid-April regarding advice. That's when I consulted Councillor O'Donovan to give them the necessary advice on it.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar.
Right, let's just check everybody's still here, nobody's sneaked out. Yeah, right, Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair. So the application for 1 pen drive is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Kath Pinnock for the reasons outlined in the officer report. Those property is a brick-built bungalow with gardens and a drive to the front, a garage attached to the side and enclosed gardens to the rear. The property is located on a residential street with properties of a similar age, although there are mixing the styles. Some are true bungalows, some are dormer bungalows, some are chalet-style bungalows. The applicant is seeking permission for the erection of extensions and alterations to form first floor accommodation. Members may recall that a very similar scheme did come to planning committee last year, which was subsequently refused by the committee and then dismissed at appeal. However, since the previous application, the applicant does appear to have taken on board the inspector's comments. If you have a look at the screen now, we've got the previously refused plans are on the right, and then the current proposals are on the left. In the inspector's decision, he'd mentioned that he felt the overall height was not out of character with the wider area, given the mix of house types. He was exceedingly concerned about the eaves being higher at the level they were proposed previously, because they were closer to the sill of the first floor window instead of kind of the header of the ground floor windows, and that's quite a strong characteristic of the area where the eaves are at the lower level. Oops, all right. Just dipped out there. Let me just pop back in. The proposal, right. So with the current application, officers are now recommending approval given the changes in design, and we feel that the applicant has overcome the previous reason for refusal and the inspector's comments. As such, officers are recommending approval subject to the conditions outlined in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jenny. Right, 2 speakers, Councillor Kath Pinnock. Yeah.
It's fine. As you've heard, it's my ward. Residents have contacted me, shared their concerns, but then what I did is, as you would expect, went away and had a good read of what went on and what's currently being applied for. And so these do not, my concerns do not necessarily reflect those of the residents, but concerns that I have sort of decided that that committee ought to think about. I think there's 2 big policies that committee ought to take into account, which aren't actually as part of the report. I've no problem with what the report says. It's a fair assessment of what's there. It's what's missing from the report that I think we should think about. And the first one is, does the application comply with the accommodation strategy for older people, which is referred to in the local plan, policy number 11? here and the housing needs strategy refers to the importance of providing suitable accommodation for older people so that they can remain independent. And this obviously includes ground floor accommodations such as bungalows like this. And the trouble with this application, it removes a bungalow from the mix of properties available when there is a real short supply of ground floor accommodation, either as for flats or as bungalows in the Clackheaton area. There's plenty actually of family homes, a lot of them being built as we speak. But the next key point that I think, which is probably more important, is that I don't think this application complies with the local plan policy number 24. That's the policy that the planning inspector referenced in dismissing the appeal for the previous application on this site. And what the policy number 24 is about design standards. And it states, and I'm going to quote here from it, proposals should promote good design by ensuring, and then there's a list of points. And one of those points is particularly regarding extensions. It says extensions are subservient to the original building, are in keeping with the existing buildings in terms of scale. Now, this application, as you've seen, doubles the accommodation size of the bungalow by creating a second story. It also increases accommodation by knocking down the garage and building a side extension, which also has 2 stories. And actually, one of my concerns in terms of streetscape, I guess it is that the garage is bigger. The extension at the side is bigger than the garage and brought forward. Whereas, as you could see from the photographs of the current townscape on Penn Drive, the garages are set back quite a long way from the bungalow frontages. So the combination of a story on top of the bungalow plus this side extension of 2 stories doubles the size of the accommodation. Well, more than doubles the size of the accommodation. It may be, I don't know, nearer 3 times anyway, let's put it like that. I haven't worked it out precisely. So I cannot see how that complies with what our plan policy says about being subservient to the original building. I mean, it clearly isn't. So I think there are solid grounds for refusal of this application. Now, that does not mean that I would oppose any extension on this building, because clearly that is possible. And that's well within what the applicants could have. But I do think that this is going too far, and what the committee may want to do is to ask the applicants to think again and come back with something that complies with that element of local plan policy 24, so that it's not such a big extension, and will comply with that policy. Thank you, Chair.
When we submitted the previous application under 2021-90302, we had followed the Kirklees Council guidance with the formal pre-application advice. After receiving an in-depth report from Kirklees Planning Department, we submitted our application. We aim to keep this as a chalet-style bungalow, but utilise the space in the roof more efficiently. This would be still classed as a bungalow, given that it had bedrooms to the ground floor. Whilst it was considered acceptable by the authority, it was brought to committee. Ultimately, the committee decided that the overall design and mass would look out of place. We decided to appeal this. However, the appeal was dismissed as the planning inspector identified that the new proposed ridge height would be suitable, as it would fall into the range of building heights shown on Penn Drive, and advises that this would not look out of place. This is noted in section 7 of the appeal decision. However, points out that the raised eaves levels would make the building look out of context with the other properties within the street scene. During the past committee hearing, it was discussed by the authority's team leader about the potential for a permitted development fallback, basically for a 2-storey house under Class AA. However, my clients are keen not to go down this route and keep the bungalow as a chalet style to preserve its character and appearance within the street scene. We have since decided to lower the eaves fully down to the existing level so that it's now on the ridge line that is higher, which would satisfy what was raised within the planning inspector's report. The changes we have made, along with the street scene drawing provided, should put members' minds at ease to conclude that there will be minimal to no harm to the neighbouring property, which was a concern raised at the previous committee hearing. We would also like to add that other bungalows on Penn Drive have been altered and extended to the front, such as 4 Penn Drive. This has again been recommended for approval by the authority, and I would really like members to consider this being more acceptable on balance on the previous one, as the family are hoping to get on with this ASAP. During the past year's planning committee meetings, I have listened to members who have raised points about how permitted development rights seem to be making a mockery of the planning system. However, this application has followed all the correct steps from pre-application advice through to fully changing the appearance following the planning inspectorate's views and consideration of the neighbouring properties' comments, to having it fully supported and checked against local policies within the authority. And in my view, if committed members don't consider the application such as this as suitable, that have followed all the correct planning steps, then this does not too. As a final point, we have also heard comments about the loss of a true bungalow from the area, which is a house type that is needed within the local area. However, no stipulations are made to house builders building hundreds of new homes. Surely if there is a shortage in this area, the onus should be on the developers rather than a single working family trying to improve their living conditions. The same could be argued about the sheer need of self-build plots within a local area, with almost 400 people registering for Kirklees self-build register, including myself for over 6 years. If more self-build plots were made available by either the authority or making developers include some as part of planning applications, we could alleviate a lot of these applications. However, nothing is noted within the local plan as discussed with Stephen Wright of Kirklees Council.
Members, it's over to you, Councillor Lowkitch.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Could I ask officers to respond to Councillor Kath Pinnock's comments? I think the main one was about how they've assessed the extensions to be subservient to the host dwelling in particular.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So LP24 sets design sort of high level standards, shall we say, in terms of what extensions should look to achieve, which goes into, and then there's the SPD, which fleshes out that detail further. So when looking at a planning application, it is about subservience, but it is about in the realm of the application as a whole, shall we say. So whenever looking at an application, subservience obviously is a consideration. However, there's other material considerations that the officers do take into account, and that is to do with the character of the area, the style in the street scene, the variation in the street scene. So to come back on that point, subservience is part of the assessment. However, in this instance, we've looked positively and proactively at it in the realm against the SPD. And within the immediate building group, there is a mixed street scene, as Jenny had outlined in our first presentation, with a varying design and house types, ridge heights, and the local topography. So in terms of the subservience issue, yes, it will be adding an additional metre onto the property. However, in this instance, the material consideration is the mixed and varying degree of the house types and styles within the local vicinity.
Chair, could I ask officers to display the frontage so I can look at the eaves again and the appearance?
What was refused and what has been submitted now? Yep.
Yeah. Take it that one on the right was refused. Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
That one on the right was refused.
That's correct.
Yes. And so the roof height is just the same. They brought the eaves down and narrowed. It's more of the appearance of a full gable. And what did the inspector, remind me, said when the original appeal was refused?
So the inspector concluded that the increase in the ridge height was acceptable, but it was to do with the design and the eaves height, shall we say, of the proposed plans. So we concluded that the introduction of contrasting proportioning and raised shoulders of the frontage gables would notably jar with a consistent design feature of local buildings. So what's been submitted now on the left-hand side has addressed those concerns, but the inspector was in agreement that the increase in ridge height could be accommodated on this site in the context of the surrounding
So it's
area.
more like a chalet style.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some concerns about this because one of the effects of the attempt to overcome the inspector's comments means, and members will have noted in those pictures there, that the revised design has got a much larger area of roof, unrelieved roof, in fact, with no gables or anything on it. I don't know what the width of it is, whether officers are able to put a figure on this, but it just seems to me that in terms of appearance, and yes, I know there are a variety of property types on Penn Drive, but one of the things that on the whole they don't have is a large area of roof, and this, it seems to me, would be out of character in terms of what's in the vicinity. Now, maybe you could relieve that by putting a gable in it, but as it stands at the moment, I don't think it's acceptable.
I agree with Councillor Pinnock for slightly different reasons. Of course, the extension is the part that worries me, that concerns me. The massing effect that Councillor Pinnock Kay mentions is of concern, and the bringing forward to the street frontage is an issue for me. Yes, there are mixtures of houses on that street, on that road, but they were designed like that. They were designed to be a balanced mix at the time of construction. So I would really worry about throwing things into that upset that design. I hear what the applicant's saying about self-build, and I applaud it. I completely agree with your assessment on that. Something that we do need to do better on as an authority. And I have some sympathy with the applicant because at the moment permitted developments and these kinds of applications are very difficult because they're still very new to try and pick our way through. I do think, though, on this fine balance, that we would have to come down on the side of refusal. I will move refusal simply because of that massing effect. I'll stop there, Chair, and see what other members have to say.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the applicant and to Councillor Pinnock for very eloquent submissions. It's something actually, it is finely balanced. I can understand the concerns and I can understand the point that was made by Councillor Pinnock with regards to losing a type of property which older people want to move into. My grandparents were looking for a bungalow when they were of the age they needed to move into one, and it was something that was not in oversupply, shall we say, in Kirklees. And I know one of our colleagues who's on this committee, not here today, is very fond of bungalows. We don't seem to have many, and losing one isn't a great situation. In mitigation to that, it doesn't displace an elderly person by making these changes. So with that in mind, and with it being finely balanced, I do think that in totality, I'm leaning towards approving this. I don't think the designs look, I think they look quite nice on both of the photos actually. But again, I don't live in the area, and I'm not, sure exactly what the reasons were originally for the first refusal, but it clearly has gone back to the council officers who've deemed this appropriate for approval today, which gives me some faith for this to be approved. But I appreciate it's a finely balanced call on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think I agree with a lot of what Councillor Gregg said, and I really understand both sides of this. I do think it is a fine balance. I'm familiar with the street. I visited this street before in the previous application that was refused by the council. I think I was on the committee at that time, and I'm familiar with the site. I think the submitted scheme is an improvement on what was previously refused. Based on the character of the street, I think it fits within the character of the street. I'm also quite sure that there will still be everything you need on the ground floor, as it were, to support someone if they, for example, couldn't use stairs. Can I just clarify with officers if that bit is right, that it still has like the full accommodation, as it were, on the ground floor, and whether that's actually potentially enforceable by condition, or whether it could be appropriate to do so, or if that's something else?
Through you, Chair, thank you. Just to clarify a point in terms of LP 11 and the about affordable housing, that's for new dwellings. Now, I do understand the loss of bungalows is a concern to members on the committee here. However, I just want to clarify that LP 11 doesn't relate to existing bungalows or existing dwellings. It's about new development. So to go to your second point in terms of the accommodation downstairs, there is a bedroom. There's two bedrooms, sorry, and a bathroom. However, you've got to think about the 6 tests for conditions, whether that's reasonable and relates to planning as an enforceable. I'd probably advise councillors that it wouldn't necessarily make those tests, but that's for councillors yourselves to discuss. But it would have to make sure that you meet the 6 tests in order for it to be acceptable.
What's in front of us is a planning application. Where the merits of LP, the local development plan regarding loss of bungalows is completely immaterial. It's a bit of a red herring. No, though, we all could agree we could have with more bungalows. This is a planning application, not about a local development plan. It's a good application. And I'm quite happy to support it. You're seconding it, I'll second it. You proposed it.
I'll move for approval, Chair.
I'll second that, Chair.
So refusal, there's only one person that's moved it. It's not been seconded. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to second that. But I just wondered if I can have an answer to the question I raised about how wide is the expansive roof that we've got here, because I think that adds to the appearance of mass if it's not broken up, and that is the thing that worries me, and that it would be actually unusual in that road.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We're just going to put a plan up here just so we can doubly check what you're requesting. I take it it's not the width of the entire property overall, it's the width of that additional gable element onto the front.
No, the point I'm making is that the way this has been designed will have quite a long expanse of roof without any intervening gables or anything like that, which is the thing I'm concerned about. So it's the overall
at the front
width of, yes, at the front. Well, at the back to a certain degree it doesn't matter, but the contribution to the street scene should not be a great long expanse of roof.
Sorry, through you, Chair, thank you. So in terms of the changes, so in paragraph 3.2, so the ridge of the house would be elevated 4.8 to 6, and the width would increase from 6.8 to 7.8. So it's that 1 metre width that's extending the property overall. It's not as significant as possibly it may appear. It's that additional 1 metre to the width that's being created. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, it does. It does answer my question, but of course, as members will the pictures where you could compare the two versions of the roof. There was more roof in the new one than in the old one, simply because of the lowering of the eaves height.
Any more questions? No. Well, we've got two things on the table. We'll go to the first one that came, and that was for approval, which was moved by Councillor Gregg and seconded by Councillor Firth. So this is to approve the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Dodd.
For.
Councillor Amwell. Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Firth.
For.
Councillor Gregg.
For.
Councillor Sheard.
For.
Councillor Stephen.
For.
Councillor Lukic.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
Against.
Councillor Lawson.
Against.
Councillor Hall.
For.
So officers' recommendations carried.
Next item, page 61. Right. Final item for today. This is the extinguishing of part of a public footpath in Denbydale, and it's Sharon that's speaking to it.
Thank you. Hello, members. This is not a planning application. This concerns a cul-de-sac footpath. A link of this, as you'll see, just goes to the property. In 2018, Public Footpaths received a report of an obstruction on this path. My colleague went and met the applicants. They discussed it, and the applicants reopened the path a month later. We've now received this application to extinguish part of the footpath on the grounds it's not needed for public use. This is the plan that shows the link between A and B of the section that just goes to the house. And below is a location plan of the area. We have quite a good selection of aerial photos, but this is from 2000, before the applicants bought the property. The path runs down this edge. As you will see, there is nothing really there. The applicants have provided evidence from a local neighbour that's known this area a lot longer. Apparently this field was used for silage and they can't remember seeing anybody. This is the current aerial photograph, including showing a new driveway to the property, and the path is shown along this edge, and that is made clearer on there. So the path just goes to the edge of this property here. This shows two different extracts of the definitive map. The top one is from the original one from 1952, showing the path again just going to the property, and the same on the current one from 1985. The applicants have provided some historical photos showing that house when they purchased it at auction. And as you'll see, nothing of really good merit to consider just walking to the property, having a look at it and walking away again. Following comments from our consultation, we received one negative comment from one of our local user groups that said we should not be extinguishing public footpaths and that you could walk to the property and you may get a view of the different area. I visited the property and here are two views that show what you can actually see from the property, and you can see the same views roundabout from all the other properties. I'll just go back to the plan at the first one and show you as that. So the path, the main path that will not be affected is part of the Kirklees way, and that does get a lot of use, but neither the neighbour nor the applicants have seen any people using this path. My colleague, when he met the applicant, said that the path needed to be open and available for a minimum of a year to allow the extinguishment to be considered. Public rights of way believe the criteria is met, that it is not needed for public use, it is not needed for access to the property, it is not to a viewpoint, and it is not to a beauty spot. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sharon. We've got two speakers. First speaker is Chris Johnson. You've 3 minutes starting from now.
Good afternoon, Chair. We bought Top of the Close Farm in 2001 as a dilapidated structure, bounded by a dry stone wall on one side and a ravine on the woodland on the other side. The footpath provided access to the farmstead only, and it ended the property carrying out any other location. Hence, it is known as a Cul-De-Sac Footpath, in that it isn't a thoroughfare or somewhere else, it is a dead end. It has taken many years of work bringing the property back to its current condition today. Around 2017, the dry stone walls were completed at the boundary of the property and a security gate fitted. To our surprise, on the 9th of May 2018, we were instructed to prop open the gate and dismantle the professionally built dry stone wall in two places to the house to create a route for walkers. We were obliged to do so and hadn't acknowledged but the footpath carried out the work within a few days. At the end of 2021, Kirklees put up notices inviting comments from the public, and there was one objector. The objector asked for evidence to substantiate the footpath had not been used prior to 2021. We confirmed this with a letter from a neighbour, Mr. Michael Walsh, who since 1972 has resided at the property on Longroyd Lane overlooking the footpath in question. He confirms he has never seen a member of the public using the footpath in question. Thank you.
Next speaker is Amanda Johnson, and you've also got 3 minutes.
The large button, the big one in the middle. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair. To summarise, historically, the path was for the residents of Top of the Close Farm, as there were no other ways of reaching the property. When the definitive footpath map was being implemented in the 1950s, we believe the footpath to Top of the Close was not objected to because the farmstead was derelict and therefore it was added to the map. Had the property been occupied at the time, then an objection may have been made and the path dismissed back then. The sole objector to extinguishment of the footpath maintains the footpath forms a very pleasant walk with views of adjacent woodland and the surrounding countryside. Our response is that the same views can be enjoyed from other footpaths in the area without having to walk up a dead-end footpath and back down again, wasting both time and energy. We feel it is not necessary for the public to be intrusive into the privacy of a domestic dwelling when there is no gain. Leaving this secluded footpath open will leave us feeling vulnerable and exposed. The objector also suggests a through route should be considered. A through route would not be possible or practical as the adjoining land is owned by other landowners. The isolated location of the property leads to security issues, hence why we feel the need for the security gate to the boundary of our property. It has been confirmed since 1972 walkers have not used the footpath. Leaving the footpath and boundary open will only be of interest to undesirable individuals in order to gain access to the secluded property and outbuildings with the sole intention of criminal activity. We can also confirm since purchasing the property in 2001, no one has used the footpath. In May 2018, following instructions to open up the footpath, a motion-activated camera has been recording the area and we can confirm no one has walked any part of the Cul-De-Sac Footpath. There must be other isolated dwellings on footpaths. However, other footpath routes are thoroughfares, i.e. they lead to somewhere. Our footpath leads to our home, and only ourselves as homeowners gain any benefit whatsoever out of the path. Walkers have the right to roam the countryside. Surely homeowners have the right to feel secure in their own homes. The overwhelming majority of walking groups we have contacted are not opposed to the extinguishment. In summary, they have stated, the footpath is not a thoroughfare. It does not lead to a viewpoint, landmark, feature of historical, archaeological or cultural interest, and there is no merit in this footpath. It is a cul-de-sac path, therefore of limited use in the wider network of public rights of way, and we see no reason why it should remain open.
Oh, it seems pretty straightforward to me. Mohan.
Thank you, Chair. The officer have consulted with the local groups, who mainly use the footpaths in our locality. Most of them say they're not going to use it. It's actually a dead end footpath. It's a full list on page 65 is here. Huddersfield Rucksack Club, they are in favor of to stop it, and Huddersfield Ramblers as well, and the Denbydale Walkers as well, and the local councillor even he given his away. It's affected. It's a dead end path. So I think we got the anyway evidence. Evidence is not much use. This one, no point to be keep it on. So I think I will move the officer recommendation which is option 4. To move the recommendation.
Right, so that's being moved. Councillor Gregg.
Could I second Councillor Sokal's approval on that? I did used to live very close to this area, and actually everything that's been said, everything that's in the report that highlights that it isn't going to anywhere other than somebody's dwelling. There's no need for it to be a footpath. It sounds absolutely totally sensible not to have a footpath down to this dwelling. Probably is a security risk as well, more than anything in that instance. Having said that, I completely wouldn't want to be closing footpaths in any other circumstances, because it does sound like this is a unique situation where there's a footpath going to nowhere. Thank you.
Any more comments, Chris?
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly. Yeah, there's definitely no need for the whole path or genuine need that I can see. I think if there was a genuine need for a different view, you could go part way along the path, but I don't actually see a genuine need for that either. It's not something I ever thought I'd be supporting, the extinguishment of an entire public footpath, but I think that's the clearly no genuine public need for this. So I'll be supporting it as well.
Kirsty and then Andrew.
No, I'd just like to make the point that in effect, why do you need a public right of way for what is in effect the access to a dwelling? It serves no purpose.
Kirsty.
Thank you, through you, Chair. This is just a matter of clarification more than anything else. So just to clarify, at paragraph 6.1, it says officers recommend that members choose option 4 at 2.7, but it's actually paragraph 2.8. I just wanted to make sure for pure clarity that that was clear. Thank you very much, Chair.
Right. Eric.
Quality. I support the recommendation, but how do you access your property? Obviously not the footpath, but is there a driveway around the edge? Because it doesn't show on the map.
Sorry, through your Chair. When I showed the original plan, the aerial photo, the drive comes in at a completely different angle by the woods. Thank you.
On a further point, have you ever thought of opening a cafe? There will be a path to the cafe.
Right. To claw back a little bit of time, we'll go to a vote because it's been moved, it's been seconded. Just a show of hands. Those in favour of the report? Yep. Nobody against? No. Right. Thank you. Home time.